Good morning and welcome back to my van build, or welcome to my van build if you're here for the first time. And today I am going to be building out the partition door, which I already started without you. I'm very sorry.
Let's go back in time real quick so I can show you how I made this wooden frame. So I'm using 2x3x8 multi-purpose stud framing lumber from Lowe's, which was $3.15 per piece, and I bought and used 8 pieces for this project. I could have used 2x3x6s in some places, but my Lowe's didn't carry any. Also, I regret not using 2x2 framing lumber to save an extra inch, but for some reason, I either didn't think they sold it or I didn't think it was gonna work with the size of the sliding door mechanism. I have no idea where my brain got it that I couldn't use 2x2, but I wish I would have at least tried because I don't think I tried hard enough.
First thing on our to-do list is to add a 1x3 to the top, just for more support, because eventually this will have a opening cabinet. I gotta stop talking and I gotta just start building. The first rule of van building is we don't talk about van building, we just do the van building. So once we start talking about it, we end up talking all day and no van building actually gets done. Also, because we love to make Fight Club references. Take your pick.
So this was the project that overwhelmed me the most in the van build. I had no clue where to start, and I completely understand the feeling of being just overwhelmed by a camper van build. But the key to these big projects really is just breaking them down into smaller, digestible things. The partition door may seem scary and impossible, but if you can figure out how to screw in a plywood wall, if you can build a box, all of those things build up into becoming the partition door.
No, I measured it twice. Oh no, it fits. I panicked too early.
And if you don't feel confident doing those smaller projects, I highly recommend checking out the sponsor of today's video, the Woodworkers Guild of America. As a member, I've been able to access their vast online bank of professional woodworking instructional videos and step-by-step demonstrations. They even have live stream classes with Q&As by experts so you can ask direct questions. Unlike YouTube videos like mine, where I make lots of mistakes, ramble about finding cookies and making Fight Club references, you can get right to the information you need and right when you need it. And also, unlike many YouTube videos, these are taught by real professionals. Recently, I've been watching the videos on cabinet making the most in preparation to build my upper cabinets and kitchen unit, using their guides like the installing drawer fronts video, or how to make face frames or easy door installations, or how to bend plywood the easy way, or drawer installation tips, and their series on how to build wall cabinets. And I even learned a trick in their easily apply edge banding tape video that has helped me stop tear out. So if you could use a little help with your van building woodworking projects, check out the link in the description to learn more, and the first 1,000 people to click the link will get a full year of premium membership to the Woodworkers Guild of America for only $1.49.
𝗔𝗯𝗰𝗋? You're bluffing. You're bluffing! 𝗔𝗕𝗋 didn't teach you that.
Nope. I figured it out.
My bad. Oh!
So there's still a few more framing pieces I need to add this morning, and here's a sketch of what the framing will look like when it's complete. The floor piece is great for drilling right into the van's subfloor for adding stability, and the extra pieces on the passenger side are for where I will hang my replica of the mirror of 𝗕𝗏𝗃 from Harry Potter on the front of the wall. Unfortunately, it is very heavy, so I needed to give it extra support right where the edges of the mirror's frame land. I also plan on adding a storage box with an opening door, and my cat's litter box will sit on the floor in front of the passenger side as well. So I am taking all of those things fully into account when making the frame. And while I finish all of that up, let's discuss the reason I think partition doors are one of the most important pieces of a van build. According to the National Auto Collision Center, during a crash, unrestrained and loose items in vehicles contribute to 13,000 injuries annually. And at 55 miles per hour, a 20-pound object can strike you with a force of 1,000 pounds. I actually got convinced to do this project from seeing a mortician on TikTok saying she would never drive in an RV, and the comments just being full of people saying how they had seen so many deaths related to people getting hit from things flying when they're in a crash. So this rock-solid wall will stop things from flying out of the living area and hitting me if I ever get into an accident, and possibly actually seriously save my life. Another reason I wanted this door is it also may deter break-ins, because not only will no one see through the wall to all of my valuables behind it, but it also may make a robber think it's too much work to break in through 2 locked doors to get past the cab. Also, if someone smashes a front window or tries to break in through the front while I'm sleeping, it gives me more time to react. Another plus is the amount of privacy it offers, and not just visually, but also sound insulation. Because sound leaks in and out the most from the front cab windows. Those windows are also the worst for maintaining temperature in the van, and I do have a really nice set of just front window covers from the Wonderful company that really help regulate temperature a lot. But they take forever to put up, and I'm lazy and I don't always want to do it. But this is like a permanently installed weather protection system. Recently, I went on a trip to Boston, and just experiencing how this door works in real life with temperature regulation, it blew my mind, and I regretted not having one in my last build instantly. I would step into the cab and instantly just feel like so much heat was on me. Honestly, I should measure the difference. I didn't have an air conditioner or a heater running, nothing. The partition door was blocking off that temperature from the windows all on its own. The wall also helps the van feel more broken up and makes the back area feel less like a car and more like a home, now that you can't see a steering wheel in the cab and all of those parts. Also, from the outside looking in, it helps with the stealth a lot, making it look more like a work vehicle and just keeping it all dark colored and blending in. And the final big reason I wanted this door was because it stops my cat from escaping whenever I open the van doors. As long as I make sure she is in the living area whenever I leave from the front doors, then I can open the front doors again to get back in the van with peace of mind that she is still in the back and not just gonna sneak past me and run away and have a little adventure of her own that I'm gonna have to spend hours trying to find her from. Some people go for having a partition wall that has no door or way to pass through to get to the cab, and that completely blows my mind because I could never. If I have to get out in the middle of the night, like if I pull up to the spot where I want to go to sleep at night when it's dark, which is what I should be doing, and I have to get out of the vehicle and walk around and open the sliding door and show everyone inside my vehicle before I close the door and lock it. Not to mention I'm getting out of my vehicle after dark and I could, human trafficking, making myself a pretty big target there. But also, if I'm sleeping in the back of the cab and something happens and I want to get out of there fast, I don't want to have to get out of my vehicle and then walk around to get in the front seat to drive away. There are so many situations where that would literally be catastrophic. Situations I can think of that I've been through. Like cops pulling up, crazy people pulling up, a crazy guy knocking on my van at 3 in the morning in San Diego. Like the list goes on and on of reasons I would never, ever, 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 ever have a fully closed door in my van to the cab. Anyway, I digress. For the next part of this project, I wanted to try to utilize more of the interior space in the wall because every inch counts and I never feel like I have enough storage space in my van, so I wanted to try to make a small box with a cabinet door to fit into the wall. I did film myself making this whole box, but this video is already extremely long, so to sum it up, I measured the slot, cut 4 pieces of wood, used wood glue and a staple gun to hold them together, and shoved them into the slot. The end. So now let's get to the part that I thought was the trickiest part, which was the actual sliding door with the metal track that the doors slide on. All right, so now I have to cut this track beam for the sliding door, and I'm a little concerned because there are large holes on this side and there are small ones on this side, and I read the instructions and all of the screws they have are the same size, so I don't get why. And I'm just gonna go for it and cut it down to the size I need, and it's probably gonna backfire later. Don't worry, it was just like $90, so no pressure. What could go wrong? Everything. Everything could go wrong. I'm like too nervous to do it. Spoiler alert, the holes being different sizes on the track meant absolutely nothing and was completely fine, and it did not matter which side I cut off. So once I cut the track down to the size of the entire large opening and slid in these 2 roly-poly-olies into the slide, because once this is screwed in, those little suckers won't be able to slide in or out anymore. No pressure. Then I pre-drilled through each of the holes in the track, then screwed it in using the screws that came with the set. This is the sliding door track I bought from Amazon. It's from the company 𝗕𝗲𝗰 and cost $83. And overall, I'm pretty happy with this choice. I just wish I hadn't lost the floor guide in the end. It actually came with a floor guide. They were super tiny and I lost them, had no idea what they were in the pack. I didn't even realize what they were the whole time until editing this video and looking back at the Amazon listing. But that's how it goes sometimes. I hope I didn't do anything wrong. Because now that's like in there.
I don't think you could ever do anything.
So my next step was cutting out the door, and I used 1/2-inch Baltic birch, but looking back, I wish I had gone with 3/4. But I think I had just gone with the 1/2-inch because I already owned it, and I would hate to buy a whole sheet of 3/4 inch at $155 for just the piece of wood for the door.
Alright, so next on my list is to attach the rail pieces and the hardware to the wood door, and then put it onto the tracks. And then make the step. Maybe I should make the step first. The step from the front is important to me. The floor up front is really squishy. I should just make sure that it's removable. The last thing I want is to be in a situation where I have to deal with the vehicle battery and then have to remove part of the door. Because I'll probably already be grumpy and I don't want to make myself more grumpy. Oh, this is way too wide. Back it up, back it up, back it up.
The vehicle battery is located underneath the driver's seat up front, so I cut the step as long as it could be, but short enough that it wouldn't hinder the flap for the battery from opening. For now, I just needed to cut the step so I would have an idea of how long the door could be without hitting the step. Next, I'm screwing in the hangers that came with the sliding door kit to the top of the wooden door I just cut. I'm screwing into the 2 end holes, and I started by marking the locations of where I wanted them and then pre-drilling, which was scary since the wood is pretty thin, and I did not want to screw on even the slightest of angle so it wouldn't come out the side. But without pre-drilling, this could have split pretty bad, so I'm just glad it all worked out in the end. Then I started screwing in the hangers, but right as the day was ending, everything had to go wrong, and the screw stripped out for 2 reasons. Because I only owned 1 size Phillips head drill bit, which I altered and bought more of, and then I was able to finish screwing it in, no problem. But only because I stopped as soon as I realized it was stripping. I used to have a problem where I would just keep letting it strip, trying to force it in. But I have learned, and my second mistake was that I never pay attention to the torque setting on my drill and just keep it at full send, which is dumb, and I need to stop. Smaller numbers are for more delicate projects from now on. I swear, one day I will learn this lesson too.
We've got a sliding door. Kind of. Kind of. I have a few issues with it. It does slide, so that's a good start. I took yesterday off of building, and I read the new Hunger Games book, and I feel refreshed, and I feel ready for a new day of building. Sometimes you just gotta step away, take a deep breath, and then come back at it with new eyes. A little overwhelming, because I don't 100% know what I'm doing all of the time. I feel like I'm making it up as I go, because I am.
So now I'm pulling in a piece of 1/4" wood for the first side of the partition door. I am really stubborn about using Baltic birch because I hate how Lowe's plywood kind of just flakes apart when I cut into it, and I want this van to live as long as I do. I want to be buried in this van, so I am stubborn on the use of Baltic birch because it is such high quality, but the problem is I can't find it anywhere in 4x8 sheets, so I'm stuck having to figure out how to use 5x5 sheets for all of my projects. So I propped up this piece with some scrap wood so that at the least the seams of where I need to have the new wood piece wouldn't be easily visible, and then I traced where all the holes I need to cut will be, specifically the hole for the storage box and a few lines for where the wood overlapped with the sliding door, and finally I made some marks of where I want the hole for the door to be.
This is one of those times where you really should put safety glasses on because I have no idea what I'm doing or how wrong this could go. So
I'm testing out my circle jig that I got from my router because I want the hole for my door to be an arch, and also I'll be cutting some cabinet doors in the van as well that I want to be arches, and so this tool should come in handy often throughout the build. I bought this from Amazon, and I really did not want to take the time to make my own jig, and I just didn't trust my skills with my jigsaw enough to make perfect lines and cut this on my own, so this is what I landed on, but it came with no instructions, and there was no YouTube videos on it or online tutorials, so I literally had to guess at how to use a power tool, which was a little nerve-wracking, but in the end, my test piece actually surprisingly came out perfect.
all right, template complete. What is this from? Oh, okay. My first thought when I did this was Ahsoka, and I realized that's very off. Or that outfit that Padme wears. I want to be able to walk through it and have my shoulders pass through. It's is that a good test?
So because I was a little nervous, I decided to do a test fit of my template by screwing in the template. That way, when I walked around to the front of the partition, I could also screw in the template again and just look from the front angle.
So now that I understand better how the router jig works, I'll try to show you, but no promises it's going to make any sense.
Step 1 is to find the top point of your arch and drill a hole so that your router will fit into it, trying to make the hole just the right size so you don't end up with too much of an extra circular hole on the side that you want to keep.
Alright, now I take the jig and I place the router bit through that first drawn hole, press it up against the top, and then I want to make this lined up straight so that I can get this to be the exact same spot.
But here's where I'm pretty sure I'm just making this up and I'm not actually using this tool properly. This came with no instructions, which is pretty ballsy for a power tool. And I just saw a like drill bit in there. So this is what I'm doing. Okay, line it up. And then I unscrewed it, and then that's just in there. That's right, my solution was just to leave the drill bit in there. Please someone in the comments enlighten us on the proper way to do this because I couldn't think of anything else. But like, hey look, it actually worked, like really well. I had to just make sure not to pull it and keep the drill bit upright and watch I wasn't pulling the router in or out too much and just let it guide me, which is how I should be using any power tool anyway. But I swear, if someone comments that putting the drill bit in like this is the proper way to use this tool, I am gonna give myself a gold star. Or a crumble cookie, actually. I'm not gonna lie, I love crumble cookies, but I look at their menu every week and I can just never go because $5 for a cookie seems like a sign of the times that I'm just not emotionally ready for. So yeah, this tool worked super well, but I also needed to mark on the sides where to stop cutting with the router because I wanted an arch and this tool makes full circles. After the arch was done, I cut off the small little section I marked for the step and then brought it back into the van to check how it lined up before I finished the cut. I walked in and out of it a few times to get the feel of it, and I'm not gonna lie, this is small. A grown, buff man would not like this door, or at least find it comfortable. But for me and my cat, this is gonna work just fine. Really think being small and short is like striking gold when living in a van. I'm pretty tall, but any taller and I would run into more problems to solve when building this van for sure. After the second test fit, I went back and cut out the hole for the storage box and the edge so the sliding door would be able to close. The edge I cut off, in the moment I was cutting it, I thought was going to be covered by the front wall for the partition, so I didn't care if it looked wonky or weird or was an odd shape, but unfortunately that changes once I close the door and realize I can't cover it. So then I set up the front piece just trying to reevaluate and replan how this was all going to be built in the end.
Okay, so if you're wondering about this gap I'm gonna leave here, it's because I discovered the door handle was gonna get blocked off and I need to be able to access it and I want to be able to use it easily. So that kind of changed everything that's happening over here and took a lot of brain power. And I think I'm actually okay with this. I think it adds some interesting dimension. And then I was thinking about adding some hooks on the inside and keeping this open and having like a jacket behind there, like an umbrella or something. So it's like hidden secret storage. I've not been in many vans with closed partition doors, but it definitely makes this space feel like its own space and less like a vehicle. I like it.
If I could go back, I think I might have just done a cutout in the front piece for the handle instead of leaving it all exposed. That way it would have hidden that back piece better. But alas, onward we go to the next step, which was tracing the holes I needed to cut in the front wall by tracing through the back wall's holes so they would all line up perfectly. Then I used my circle jig to cut out the next arch, and the lines didn't math up exactly, but they were close enough. And honestly, from the perspective of 𝗓𝗄𝗰, who has seen the door all done, I have never noticed it not being the exact measurements again since that moment, but it did end up looking pretty matched up once I hung it back up.
I'm not 100% sure why I'm checking, because at this point there's not much I can do, but
It's strange because it looks really off when it isn't fully cut out, but once I finish cutting it, it looks great. It never really works that way when I just keep powering through.
This is one of those projects that I'm hating in the moment, but going to love when I'm actually living in the van. If I can ever finish it and or do it right. There's no way it's going to be absolutely perfect, but honestly, it's looking pretty good. Could be worse. Could be much worse.
Now I needed to go back and cut out the piece to fit in where the 5x5 plywood sheet didn't reach. It just fit close enough, and because I knew I was covering it later with fabric and that this portion of the wall will be super supported by the closet wall, it didn't really matter, which is also why I did not finish off the edge of the front piece of 5x5. So this day I was just doing some last minute touch-ups to the frame that I couldn't do before because I was out of pocket screws. And then I pulled out the plywood wall that's on the front side of the cab so I could cover it in velvet fabric. I love, love, love how the fabric looks, but this was kind of like a regret for me looking back because it has gotten so dirty already, especially with my cat Betty's white hair. It just sticks right to it like crazy. So while it may have been originally visually appealing, it's not the most realistic option for a high traffic area I've personally found. But alas, here's, how I put it on the wall. I started by laying it flat over the piece. Unfortunately, it was a super windy day, so this was a more difficult task than usual. And then I used a 3M spray adhesive and heavily sprayed some all over one section, and then waited a few minutes for it to get tacky. A few minutes which I successfully used to strike fear into the heart of my neighbors by playing with scissors. Once the glue feels tacky to the touch, then lay the fabric over it, smoothing out any wrinkles, and then I went over the edges with a staple gun just to keep them from drooping from the weight of the fabric. Unfortunately, because it was really windy, sometimes the glue sprayed out of the bottle and into the wind and it would just get carried off, and unfortunately land on the fabric, and it was really hard to get out. Also, if I sprayed the glue too heavily, it would leak through the velvet and leave a stain that looked like a pool of glue. So there was some learning to be had here. But in the end, overall, the finished product came out looking really expensive and classy, and I do love how it looks. I just need to get it like a lint roller from my cat's hair. From the outside of the van, it's looking way more like a utility work van. And at night, the light doesn't leak out of it either, which is so great. I also took the door down and covered the cab side in velvet, that way it would just match the rest of the partition. I also did a few smaller projects after that, including cutting out a temporary top piece for the front wall. I need to go back and add a cabinet door with hinges so I can access the upper storage, but I want to do that after I install the closet door so I can make sure they don't clash with each other. And I also went back and added wool insulation into the holes in the framing of the wall. A few projects later, I added in the second closet wall, which made the partition so much more sturdy, and then I felt like it was finally time to go and secure the whole partition wall, screwing it into the walls and the floor. There is still a gap in the front under the overhead storage. I need to put like a piece of wood there to close the gap between the partition and the storage. But I've put that off for another day because there are more fun things to do in this build, like finish this step that I hand painted, and I used a Cricut cutting machine to cut out the words with one of my favorite quotes from the best book series of all time, Throne of Glass. And I could have put epoxy over the step, but I've never used large quantities of epoxy before, and I just wasn't in the mood to try something new. So instead, I just found it easier to just order this desk liner on Amazon. They came in lots of different custom sizes, and then I screwed it onto the step and then used a razor blade to cut it into the perfect size. So we'll see how that holds up over time, since it is a desk mat and it's now a floor mat for a high traffic area, but I cannot stop staring at it. I am in love with the design I went with. It's actually not my original design. It's from Etsy, meant for book rebinding, but it was too perfect for this, and I replicated it into this step, and I love it so much. I think the desk mat ended up being a little too glossy, but that's okay. Next, I installed the locks to the front and back of the sliding door to keep it in place while driving, and of course for safety and protection as well. Then I started on hanging the mirror of 𝗕𝗏, which I want to say was the very first thing I knew I wanted in the van. I think I bought this almost 2 years ago, and I opened it in maybe like my floor building video. So long ago. Aesthetically, it was the only thing I knew I had to have in the end van build. It is in all of my sketches since the very beginning, so to see it finally on the wall is very rewarding. that, the partition door is officially finished. I am so excited. I love it so much. It completely exceeded my expectations. And there's definitely some things I wish were better or I could change or still need to work on, but I just feel like this is going to be one of the most important pieces I've put in my van build. And I remember how I felt in the beginning of the build, just so scared of tackling this project, and now it's done, and it was absolutely worth the effort. But if this video was helpful, be sure to hit the subscribe button and check out my van build series playlist where I go through everything I've done in this whole van build step by step. And my next video that's kind of a sister to this video is how I built the litter box and kind of organizing the little drawer I made in the partition and showing that whole process. So hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.